we are featuring the foundation paper piecing technique. If you're not familiar with foundation paper piecing, it's when you use a piece of paper, although you can technically do it with fabric also, but foundation paper piecing is what we're talking about. Um, so the pattern that you're going to stitch is printed on a piece of paper, and you stitch the fabric onto the paper along those lines. And then after you finish the block or the whole quilt, you pull out the papers and throw them out, and you have just a normal block. Why would you want to do this? It's because it enables you to piece shapes that would be very difficult to piece by machine if you just cut them out and put them back together again. Bias, weird, like tiny points, things like that. If you've ever seen one of those Paula Nadelstern quilts, that's the right name, right?
Yeah.
And it's like all the craziness that she achieved, she does it with foundation paper piecing. And because we're about to launch the Zoo Family Portrait Block of the Month in July, which is all done in foundation paper piecing, we are offering this tutorial in case you have never done foundation paper piecing and that's keeping you away from making that quilt. We're going to teach you how. And by we, I mean Jen is going to teach you how.
Yay. Oh my goodness, somebody from France.
Ooh.
All right. The
So
other
it's like
reason,
midnight
even to
there. So it's midnight in France, I think, right?
Oh, I don't do time zones.
I'm pretty
Maybe.
sure they're 6 hours ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. The other reason to do foundation paper piecing, even with a really simple block, is look at how precise these points are. You just get a lot of precision even with a simple block. I think my camera's backwards or something and I'm confused. But you can get really precise points without trying all that hard, just by stitching on the lines that are on your paper. So it's really a great way to make it easier for you.
Yeah. Like that block that Jen is showing, that's our economy block pattern. Not that we invented this shape. This is a really classic block that is in the public domain. People also called this a square in a square, or what was the other name for it, Jen?
They called it a diamond in a square.
Diamond in a square,
Which
yeah.
of course I took offense to, so.
Because that doesn't look like a diamond to you. It's just a
It's a
square on its
square.
side. Yeah, exactly. I agree. We get obsessed with silly things like that. If you want to download this pattern, it's a PDF, a free PDF on our website. You can scan this QR code, and then you add it to your cart and check out, but without paying anything, and then you can download the PDF immediately. And the link is also in the description of this video. So if you don't catch it right now, it'll still be there. I guess take it away, Jen.
All right, I'm going to switch me on to my other camera and blow out this image. Okay, so this is the block that we're aiming for, and I've got it done with 3 fabrics. What you're going to get when you download the pattern at gothamquilts.com is this 1-page sheet, and it's got some information up at the top for you. If you want to pre-cut your shapes, it's got the dimensions. You're going to want a 3.5-inch square for the middle, a 3.25-inch square for the sides here, or you can cut 3.5 and then cut it again on diagonal for those shapes. And I have a 4-inch square that I cut on the diagonal for the outer shapes. You don't need to pre-cut, but it makes it easier, especially if it's your first time. It's kind of a little bit easier to hit the target when you have something that's just right. The other thing that's really important on this is to look at this 1-inch scale square and measure it. Make sure that your printer printed it out the right way. For this one, it's not quite as important because as long as all of the ones you make are the same, it should be fine. But I've seen printers that kind of squish things and make rectangles, which would make it really frustrating. So just measure that, make sure it's right. When you print it out, don't do any of the fit to page or scale. It should be printed at 100% scale, and that'll give you this precise block that finishes at 6-inch finished, 6.5 inches if you're counting your seam allowances. And you'll notice there are numbers, and it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is the order that you stitch your pieces together in. So after you've made sure that it's the right size, you're going to want to cut out your paper. along the dotted lines. That's your finish line. And of course, you see I did it with a scissors, so it's wonky. My fabric scissors, not my paper scissors.
What?
And I like to use a light box. Oh, wrong button. That's this one over here, which won't work because, oh, never mind. All right. I
Live
like to
demo,
use a light box.
people. Veronique is asking, is it just regular printer paper?
It is just regular printer paper. There is fancier paper you can buy that's called, I think it's like vellum and stuff that you can buy, or newsprint, but printer paper is already in my house, so that's what I use. So what you're going to do is put your fabric print side down and put your pattern on top. And can you see? You can see through the
Yes.
light box. Beautiful. Make sure that you've got your piece lined up so that you've got about a 1/4 inch seam all the way around. It doesn't have to be perfect, but closer to perfect is better. And for this, I like to just use for the first one a little dab of glue. This is just Elmer's school glue that's washable, just to kind of adhere that so it doesn't slip around. It's, paper is slippery, things can slide on you. Then you're going to want to take your next piece. So this is piece number 1. This is going to be piece number 2. And you're going to want to place it here, print side, so right sides together, and kind of center it. We've got a little bit of extra with this size. And then again, with the light box, just make sure everybody's lined up. And then take it over to the sewing machine. And I will move my camera all fancy and try not to knock everything over. Is that good? Do you think that's enough?
Yeah, that looks good.
All right. So I'm going to bring it over, and I'm just kind of holding down so that my pieces stay together. I don't use pinning when I do this. You can pin if you need to. And I'm going to start stitching a few stitches away from the line. Oh, also, I have shortened my stitch length. That helps later on in the process when you're removing the papers. More perforations make the papers come out easier.
What did you shorten it to?
I have it at 2 from 2.5.
Oh, do you normally piece at 2.5?
Yeah, that's just what I piece at when my sewing machine comes on.
Normally I piece at 2, and then I do foundation paper piecing at 1.5.
Oh, I end up ripping things out, and more stitches makes it harder to rip things out.
It's true.
Also, if I have to change it, I haven't looked at the machine to adjust the settings, but if I have to change it, I never remember to do that. So I will, I never put it back to the right way. All right. So what I do then.
Oh, Andrea's saying she does 1.5 or 1.8.
Yeah, I'm probably not narrow enough. So I'm going to fold this now along the perforation and just use my thumbnail. And this is kind of helping for later in the process. It's not as much of a help right now. Then I'm going to flip this over and with the light box, double check that I've got my fabric all the way past the seam lines that I want to cover. And then I'm going to do this step. Now, this is where it can be a little bit dangerous. Make sure that your fabrics that you've stitched are behind your paper. And the only thing sticking out is your seam allowance. And this is my add a quarter ruler, which is a really cool tool. We have them, I think we have them on pre-order, right?
Yeah, we're taking orders for them for
And it
the
has,
month.
yeah, it has a lip and a 1/4 inch. So what you do is you kind of butt it up against the folded paper and then trim. And what it does is it gives you a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. So there's that. And then I am going to flip this over. And usually I would use my little iron, but when you're doing videos, it's always better to have fewer wires. All right, so that's piece number 1. You can see it covers nicely. Then we're going to go to piece number 2, which is this top one, and do the same process. So we're going to, we can do it on the side. We can line it up here and hold it in place. And if you're worried about things sliding around, pins are fine. Just keep in mind that you have to get them out and not sew over them. I never sew over pins with my sewing machine because I've hit the pins too many times.
Yep.
All right. So, of course, it didn't go through. This is part of the reason I don't pin with paper piecing is because it's more difficult. All right. So I'm just going to stitch along that line. Everybody's lined up nice, nice.
I sometimes will put a pin like in the middle that
Yeah.
nowhere near the place I'm going to stitch. That way I don't have to worry about pulling the pin out, just to keep
Oh,
the fabric from shifting.
yeah. That's a good idea.
And Deb is
Usually I just
asking,
hold them.
how come you can't cut the 1/4 inch seam before you stitched it?
You can. It's kind of however whatever rhythm you like. I like doing it afterwards. That way I don't have to have it lined up perfectly.
Right.
But
And
there's
so even if you cut it first, if you didn't stitch it perfectly, then you still would want to trim afterwards.
yeah.
So that's why you trim after you make the line, not before you make the stitch line.
So what I did there was I pulled and there so since this stitching crossed this line, there were some stitches up here and I just kind of pulled the fabric back so that I'm trying to make it easier later to take the paper out as I go along. If But I fold the papers first. I'm going to double check again that I covered everything that I need to cover. Fold it
And you
back.
didn't press your first seam before you did your second, right?
I did.
Or
I
did I
used my
miss
little
you?
seam roller.
Oh, you used the seam roller. I completely missed that.
Yeah. So I'm going to take it like this. And I am a presser. I like to press a lot. I will take it to the iron repeatedly to get that. But yeah, I press them into place. I don't want to have any little tucks later because that will take away from the perfectionism that I'm going for.
Yeah, it's if you own one of those mini irons and those little wool pressing mats, this is the perfect use for that. So then
Yeah.
you don't have to get up after every single stitch. I mean, seam.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to pull this. I'm going to hold my stitches and pull this back just to kind of get it there. It doesn't matter if there's little holes in the paper here or there. And then I'm going to press it and I'm going to trim. I see freezer paper. So,
Yeah, I don't think I was about to respond to her.
okay, that's like a whole different technique with the freezer paper.
It's more like, how can you put freezer paper in your printer?
Well, you can. Um, there's a way, but it's a different technique. You do press it a little bit to keep your papers in place, but it's also like you fold the paper away and you don't stitch through the paper.
Okay, so Veronique, if you're thinking about freezer paper, foundation paper piecing, that's a slightly different technique. And look up Tara Fonin. She teaches an
Right.
online class for that technique.
Yes, that's who I learned it from.
So they're both called foundation paper, but it's not really the same thing. And I definitely would not put freezer paper in my printer.
It's okay. I've done it in my inkjet printer.
I guess if you have an inkjet, yeah, I have a laser.
Yeah, it's okay in your inkjet, but you have to do some prep. Like you have to iron like a little piece of paper at the front so that it will suck it through. It's like
Oh
a
my
whole
God.
process.
Yeah, that sounds like a process.
So every time I stitch one, I'm going to trim. And it's definitely not the fastest process, but you can do things like, so this block isn't super exciting to foundation paper piece. It's just a good place to learn. That Zoo family quilt that we're doing, I don't know that you could do that without foundation paper piecing and still maintain your sanity. Like, I think
Yeah.
that one would just be so hard.
Especially the little eyeballs with all those little
Oh my
details.
goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, for my money, this is the only way to do that.
Foundation
So,
paper piecing also is satisfying in like, there's always a next step and it's like, it's already laid out for you and it's almost like paint by numbers in a way. It's like, do number one, do number two, do number three. And then you look at it and you're done. And
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to try Yvette's trick and put a pin through here. I'm on a cutting mat, so it's, yep, that works. Okay.
Yeah, so that's what if I'm going to pin it, that's how I pin it, is I put the pin nowhere near the line that I'm going to stitch, so I don't have to worry about pulling it out.
So I keep putting my hand under. You really want to make sure that this fabric is where you want it to be, because otherwise sometimes things fold up and move around.
Yeah. And also make sure none of the other pieces have folded
Right.
in the wrong place, and then you accidentally stitch it, because since you're stitching from the back, you're stitching where the printed lines are, right? So you can't see your fabric when you're stitching. You can only see the paper.
Yeah. There we go. So one thing that's really nice about the foundation paper piecing, so this one I cut all of these squares to be the right size and they're all on the right grain line and everything. If you want to just use scraps and disregard bias altogether, you're sewing everything to a foundation that doesn't stretch.
Yep.
So you can get away with some wonky piecing and some different stuff because of the paper. I actually have a client quilt to do on the long arm that's all foundation paper pieced. And you can tell she definitely, you know, the grain line was not her main concern. So, oh, that's funny. That's 9. 6 and 9 look the same if you flip it over. She didn't pay much attention to the grain line, but all of her points match up because she was sewing on the paper. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I almost never cut my pieces as accurately as you cut these when I'm doing foundation paper. I just do like
yeah,
a rough cut that is bigger than the piece I need, and don't worry about it.
yeah. That's typically how I do it but I was doing it on video tonight and I want to show off how fancy I am. All right. So now I'm moving. So I've got the first row, I've got the first block down and the first row of pieces here.
Can
Now
you
I'm
hold
going
it
to,
up so we can see that whole section? Yeah. So you did one round basically.
yep. And it sticks out over the edges, and that's fine because we're going to take care of that in the trimming. So this part, having pieces that's too big attached to your foundation is not a problem. It's when you can see your line, like, you know, this line is peeking through, that's a problem. You always want to make sure you have a nice 1/4 inch. If you don't have a fancy light box, you can hold it up to a window or up to the light on your ceiling. But when I got the light box, I was thrilled. I don't use it all that often, but when I do, it's almost always for foundation paper piecing. All right. So these guys are here and I can really see what's going on and I can see the end of the fabric. So I'm going to just hold on to those. Back to the sewing machine. Boy, I need to reconsider this setup.
No, you're doing fine.
I think I need like 4 cameras and 2 more canvas stands. Okay. And on the end one, I don't know if you can tell, I sewed all the way across in the seam allowance too. Like so. Oh, here. Okay. Ooh, the computer's back, or the the camera's flipped, and the wrong fingers are moving. So I stitched through the seam allowance so that the block is going to be held together all the way, because we're going to trim things.
Uh, Jen, we're getting a question about the fabrics you're using. What's the name of the collection they're from?
Is Andrea still on?
Yeah. So
I don't know
hopefully
the name.
Andrea will answer the question.
Yeah, I don't know the name. I looked
Me
up
either.
Art Gallery in blue, and I know that this one is called Itajime. Um,
That's a word.
it's Japanese word,
Oh, okay.
and I don't know
Cool.
if that's how you
Looking it up.
say it, but that's how you spell it. But there's some new fabrics that we just got in, and I happened to be lurking about the shop this week. Last week. Was it
So
last week?
Deb, we will figure out the name of this. Neither one of us knows off the top of our head. And since Andrea isn't here tonight, she's the one who knows the answer to that.
Here, excuse my elbow for a minute. I can look it up. It wasn't like put together like a collection yet, which is here we go. Itajime, Itajime blocks.
Okay, I found it. I'm going to put a
And if
link to it in the chat.
yeah, and then when you go down, it says you may also like, and it starts pulling up the companion prints that go with it. Although I don't know that they're all listed yet.
So it's called Ink Perfect Collection.
Ah. Yeah, see, I'm trying to be good and use fabrics that are current, and they're so current that I don't even know what they are.
Yeah.
I just know that there were bolts of them sitting there. All right. So it is totally okay at this point to trim, but to me, that's like extra work because I'll come back and trim it again anyways. So I don't do that. I just
You
line
don't
these
trim
up.
that inner seam?
After I stitch it, I will.
Oh, I
But
see what
right
you mean.
now, I won't.
Yeah, okay.
I do love this silly little lamp stand. Okay. So I'm going to start stitching all the way at the seam allowance and then just come across. All right. And this little point here where you stitch, let's see if I can, yeah, where you stitch across these two lines, this is why you get these perfect points here.
Ooh.
Like, you know, and it's funny, I just spent a morning lecturing about Kawandi and how it doesn't matter and there's no need to be perfect. And then I'm totally
Yeah, I'm the
getting
opposite
excited
end.
about how perfect this one is.
Yeah.
So
That's like I always tell people that I think you should learn every technique that you
right.
can. And you never have to do it again if you don't want to. But if you know how, if it comes up in the future that that's what you need to do to make the best version of whatever it is you're trying to
Yeah.
do, then you'll be able to do it.
Okay. So here is a learning experience. I'm not paying enough attention.
And it's
And you can
slightly crooked.
see, and it's crooked and it's short. And it's short of the seam allowance. And it's really too short to kind of fudge it. So I'm not going to fix it right now. What I would do is rip it
Fix it.
out.
Fix it.
Fix it? You want me to rip it?
Yeah,
I don't
fix
even
it.
know where my seam ripper is.
I mean, learning how to take them out is pretty important too, I think.
Oh, okay. Let me find a seam ripper. I think the only one I have is this emergency room trip seam ripper. All right. If I have to go to the hospital, I'm going to collect workman's comp.
No, you won't.
All right. I don't know where my seam rippers are, like in my travel bags. There we go. This isn't too bad though. Yeah, so this is the only downside of making your stitches so small is that you got to take them all out when you mess up.
And it's normal to have to
It
rip a piece out. Like I would
absolutely.
say every project I've done with foundation paper piecing, at least once, when you flip it over, the fabric isn't exactly covering the place it needs to
Right.
cover.
And so the other thing I would do is since, you know, I pre-cut these pieces to 4 inches, if I have a consistent problem and I have that issue again and again, I will not have it more than twice. But if I have that problem again, I will just go back and cut some bigger pieces.
Yeah.
But I am going to do this. And the other thing you can do, there is a little cheat if you're now getting paranoid that your sizes aren't right. Put your piece there where you're going to stitch it, pin it along the seam line. This is more helpful. Like we're going to have some weird shapes in Zoo Family.
Right.
And this is helpful to do this, pin it there. And then you can, if it's not pinched, you can flip it over and see that it is going to match. Like, so it doesn't cover over here quite right, but I know when I sew it, it'll be more accurate. So, although it's possible that I cut those squares the wrong size. Stuff happens when I'm tired.
Well, I think you also have a little bit more than a 1/4 inch of that dark blue sticking out.
I may have, so I am going to scoot it down a little. There we go. And then move my camera again. And
The other trick that I learned to figure out if you have enough is at the stage you're in now, if you fold it back over the piece that you're about to stitch, yeah, like that. If you
Oh,
hold it up, then you can look at the fabric that's waiting to be flipped over and see if it covers. If that makes
yeah.
sense as a sentence.
I don't think that didn't make sense to me, but we
Okay,
we
I'll
are so
walk you
different.
through.
Our brains are so different.
Yeah, I'll walk you
And
through how to do it on the next one, and we can
okay,
show people.
I know foundation paper piecing for me always feels like I can't really do anything else that day. I can't switch to different techniques because you have to get like kind of in the zone and everything feels backwards.
Well, because you're sewing from the wrong side.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I took a couple of classes with Sarah Bond,
Oh, that's
and
good. Oh,
oh
she's
yeah, that looks
great.
good.
Yeah.
And she has this very relaxed approach to doing foundation
Mm-hmm.
paper piecing, and she actually does chain stitching foundation paper piecing,
Yes.
which is just blew my mind. Like she's working on more than one block at a time.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm a one at a time girl.
I was until I took that class with her, and then I was like, "This is brilliant and saves you so much time."
I couldn't get into that part of it. Like I liked it and I did some of it, but I what I do with foundation paper piecing is if I'm going to make a mistake, I don't want to make that mistake efficiently. I want to just do it once.
Yeah.
All right. So
Okay,
I can
so
see
the
my,
thing I was just explaining was at the stage you're in now.
oh, like this.
Yes, but the opposite of that. So flip the fabric, flip the paper back over the way you had it, like folded down.
Oh, okay.
And then when you pick up the whole thing with the background fabric, with the fabric you're about to stitch, and you hold it up to the light, then it'll tell you if the fabric covers
I
that entire
see.
piece that you
I
folded up.
see. I'm looking for the shadow in here
Right.
to make sure I got it. Okay. I got it. That makes sense.
And
Oh,
I still sometimes make a mistake, but that trick really helped a
that
lot.
helps. Yeah, that's good. I'm trying to line this back up. And we have a dinner delivery, and the security
Oh,
department
nice.
is trying to bark
You
in the
swap your camera again?
studio. Huh?
Can you point your camera again?
Oh, yes. Sometimes the talking and the doing is hard.
Too many motion things to move at the
Yeah.
same time. What's really nice is you don't have to pay attention to your quarter inch seam while you're stitching on this.
Right.
So like all of us are so used to really keeping an eye on that edge of your foot and don't go too fast, right? Because you're trying to keep a quarter inch seam. On this, you just have to stitch on the line.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to really worry about that, the quarter inch so much. I mean, you do worry about it when trimming.
And when you place the fabric, but not when you're
Yeah.
stitching.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is a day to give your quarter inch seam a vacation. Yeah, so that seems a little narrow, but you know
Eh,
what? Nobody's going to know after I
it'll be
quilt
fine.
it. Although you can see I've got like, I'm not quite perfect there.
Uh-oh. I
Uh-oh.
want my money back, Jen.
I know, right? Oh, but you know what? Remember, I put it up for free. All right, so I'm going to take the little scraps off of here and make sure it's big enough. And it's not because I trimmed it. All right, I'm going to cut one more 4-inch square. I thought I was being so smart to order dinner while we were doing this, and I forgot that it was going to get here. So
And
Oscar's
then get cold.
downstairs having words. All right. You would think at this point he would realize that somebody coming at this hour is food and he might get some, but nope.
So he's barking at the delivery person, is what you're saying?
Yep. Yep. All right. So lining up the last one. And this is where I get excited. And typically this is where I make mistakes because I'm
It's the
almost
last
done.
one. Yeah. It's amazing how that works, right?
Yeah. Okay. It's funny, the view on the phone is totally different than the view on the screen.
Oh, I didn't realize
Okay.
that.
Yeah. And I think it's time to clean my thread. Go, it cut this time. All right. So here's the last one. I'm going to flip it and check it. Perfect.
Woo!
We're perfect enough. Fold this back again, trim it. The only downside about foundation paper piecing is my floor is a disaster now
Yeah.
because I keep
It
swiping
does
the little
leave little
scraps.
teeny bits of paper and fabric everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So, ta-da.
Woo!
And I can't do it right now because the camera is in the way. But I will take this now and I'll give it a press with an iron to make it really flat. And then I will trim a 1/4 inch away from this printed line, you know, about on the dotted line, but you can see I wasn't paying super attention there. And I will have a perfect block that will go nicely with this one. And I will say that if you're using a print with stripes, pay attention when you're putting them on if it bothers you if they're going in different directions. These should be going all in one direction, but I was tired. So I won't be taking that block apart though. But
It
if you're
doesn't matter.
using, yeah, if you're using linear prints or directional prints and you care, just a little bit of attention will fix that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Do you want to just quickly show them how the two would go together now? You don't have to stitch it, but just explain that.
Oh, yeah. So when you're putting them together, after you press them or trim them, press them. When you want to line them up and you want these little points to match up perfectly, if perfectly is your thing, put a pin through that point and put it through the point on this block. Make sure it's there. Put a pin through each corner. I hope this is what you meant.
Yeah.
And then make sure the pin goes through the corner here.
So basically, she's aligning the stitch lines of one block with the stitch lines of the other block.
Yeah. I mean, on this one, you could get away with just trimming it and pulling the papers out now. And then I'm just going to rotate my pin and do it. Really, if I was trying to win a ribbon, I would use more pins, but you may have heard I just dropped my pin cushion. And they're now a game of 52 pickup. So this one I'm just going to leave like that. And then you would stitch across, you know, from the edge all the way across over to here. Don't let her come over here. I don't want her to get in the pin. Thank you. And then you would have your perfect little blocks matched up. We'll just turn this like this and pretend.
Yay!
And they'll come together. Nice, nice. And wouldn't this look pretty, this fabric in a quilt?
Oh, yeah. And this is such an easy block that works with
Yeah.
so many different fabric combinations. You can do fussy cutting in that middle square. You could do, you know, an ombre where it's like light on the end and dark in the middle. There's so many variations of this, and they all look fabulous.
Yeah. And it's really fun to see, like, you know, just moving the fabrics around, how it changes the look of the block.
Yeah.
I really like it. This one, I actually kind of flipped them unintentionally. I wanted to make sure that the fabrics that I grabbed from the stack were on the website already. But yeah, now I kind of want to make this whole quilt.
Yeah, I kind of do too. All right. So
Yeah,
I will
it's pretty.
maybe I'll put me back up at the top, and then I'll show,
Yeah. Oh.
I'll put the QR code up again. So you can scan this QR code to go to our website and download the pattern, and print it out and try it for yourself. And if you can also click the link that's in the description of the video. Or you could go to gothamquilts.com and just search for the phrase economy block. Is the only thing we have that's called economy block. And also, I want to put up the link to the Zoo Family Block of the Month that we've referenced several times in this video. If you haven't signed up for it yet, we are still taking signups. The fund starts in July, and it's a 12-month block of the month program. So for 12 months, every month you're going to get a shipment of fabric and a pattern and do a bit of this quilt bit by bit by bit for 12 months. And every inch of it is foundation paper piecing. Thanks for watching our foundation paper piecing tutorial. I hope that we've demystified the process of foundation paper piecing, made it more approachable for you. If you do have any questions about what we covered, or maybe how to do some other step in the foundation paper piecing process, please feel free to leave a comment in this video and we will get back to you as soon as we can. You can also reach us by sending us an email anytime to info@gothamquilts.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram if you prefer to communicate that way. And also, you may consider joining our community site. We offer a free, completely free to join, essentially like our own private Facebook that doesn't have ads, doesn't have a cousin trying to sell you leggings. We call it the Gotham Quilts community site, and all you have to do is click a button, choose a name and a password, and then you can talk with other quilters. There's about 1,000 members in there right now, so some conversations do get really interesting, and people show what they're doing or ask questions and ask for help. The website for that is community.gothamquilts.com. The link is also in the description of this video, along with the link to download the pattern, the link to the block of the month that we're running for Zoo Family Portrait starting July 2024. And also the third thing is the link to the community site. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back with more tutorials and more quilting fun next time. Bye.